Today on Muddybeards 4x4, we're going to build some frame stiffeners. Alright, well now I basically got all the accessories removed. Took out all the track bar bracket, took off the brake line bracket, got rid of the coils, took the shocks out. I unbolted the steering box, which I got lucky. My steering box spacer is actually still in one piece, so that's good. And I even removed, there's this piece right here that goes across the front, you know, right here across like where the core support is, and I don't really understand even what the purpose of it is. I figured maybe it was extra like core support or like for fender support, but it really seems to be, I don't even really know what the purpose is. I don't think I'm gonna need it, so I went ahead and unbolted that and removed that as well. So the next step for me is to do this, which is basically make my template that I can lay out on sheet metal later. And so here it is. I pretty much got what I wanted. And I essentially just put a big sheet of cardboard on here and just kept kind of tracing along the lines with a Sharpie, going out and cutting it out. And I had to do it several times, especially around like here, to make it fit where I wanted it to, and all the way up to the ends. But I think I pretty much got the shape that I wanted. As far as down in here, you know, it doesn't go all the way down because the actual uni-frame starts to kind of conform down. Well, I actually plated, if you can see here, when I removed the factory lower control arm mounts, when I went long arm, I went ahead and replated it. And so I kind of want to connect the two, but I think what I'll do is once this is on, I can take like a piece of flat bar and sort of just go all the way up and actually weld them together. And that way it's like fully welded. But because it contours down, that's going to be kind of hard to do with like one solid piece of metal. So I think I'll just add another piece, and I think that'll look fine. And then I made mine swing all the way down here. It's kind of hard to see, but it's connected with the mid-frame stiffeners that I made myself out of some angle iron. So I'm gonna have it come all the way down here and connect. That way the entire thing is stiffened from the middle section all the way through the front. So it goes all the way up here, and then I think I'm gonna terminate it right here at my bumper bracket. I want it actually to go all the way through, so you can go through about another, you know, I don't know, about 5 inches, but I don't want to have to completely rebuild my bumper. If I do that, and if I use 3/16, then I think my bumper won't fit over it if it's 3/16. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stop it right at the edge of the bumper, and then I'll make a little like cross brace or a little extra brace here that I can actually bolt on through the steering box bolts and the bumper bolts when this is all done. And I think that'll be super strong that way, and it'll make my bumper a little bit stronger than just the stock 3 mounting holes. Okay, so I think the thing that I need to do now though is, this is the piece that I want, and I'm gonna go cut this out. But before I do that, there's a couple things I need to mark, at least on the driver's side anyway. Passenger side, not really, but because the steering box is on this side, there's, you know, the bolt holes for it, I'm obviously gonna have to drill out. Now you could do a bunch of measurements and stuff, but I kind of think that this might be the easy thing to do, is just take like something like this, like a spreader, and sort of just kind of push down on the cardboard. And eventually what they'll do is it'll probably show the crease of the bolt holes, and then I can actually mark them out and punch them out. And that way when I cut this thing out of metal, I can use this same template to mark out the holes for the steering box. As far as the track bar, so this is my track bar bracket that actually a buddy and I made. It's a lot beefier one, we just made it. It bolts through here, and then on the bottom of the uni-frame, which technically the way I have this built, I am not going to be putting stiffeners over that. But I don't think I'm gonna bolt this thing on anymore. My axles moved forward about 2 inches when I did my whole long arm setup here. So I think what I wanna do is I'm probably actually gonna end up moving this forward about 2 inches. Instead of bolting it in, I think I'm probably just gonna weld it to you know, the new stiffener. I think I'm gonna weld it on the top and the bottom here. So I am gonna have to figure that out. If not, the cool thing is that I'm not gonna run the stiffener up above this piece. So if I need to put it back in the same location, I can. So I'm gonna go ahead and push this down, find the holes, and be able to mark those holes, and then I should be able to actually go and cut this thing out. Pretty sweet. Ah, frame stiffeners. So here they are. I actually was able to go over to my buddy Dan's house, and he actually cut these out of some sheet metal. This is 3/16 thick. He was able to cut it out of sheet metal for me with his plasma cutter. There's one, which made it just a whole lot easier. I normally cut this kind of stuff out with my angle grinder, but that was like a lot easier to do this with the plasma cutter. And so now I have my frame stiffeners. They're about ready to install, but before I do, I got to drill some holes. So on the driver's side, I'll have to put my template back down, but I have to drill out holes that I marked out for my steering box. So I got to drill those holes, so that way my bolts for the steering box can go all the way through this. But also what I'm going to do is that if I install it just like this, I mean, that'd be fine. I could weld around the edges of this entire thing, and it's certainly going to help strengthen it up. But I want to be able to drill some holes using like a hole saw or maybe some drill bits, so that I can actually do some plug welds in the center of the frame stiffener as well. That way that I'm not just welding around the edges, I'm actually welding onto the meat of the frame and stuff here too, and it just makes it that much stronger. And that's the whole point, is to make this thing nice and strong. So I got to go ahead and take these, blank pieces of metal here and drill some holes, so that when I go to install these, I have some places that I can do plug welds around to make this thing nice and strong. So I'm going to go ahead and drill some holes, and the next step will be to install them onto the Jeep. Well, here it is, my frame stiffener. I got the holes all drilled, so I got my holes for my bolt holes for my steering box drilled out, and then I got some plug weld holes drilled throughout the frame stiffener. I just did them a couple different places, right across the middle, down here towards the bottom, and at the very, very end here. And I just used a hole saw there with my electric hand drill, which was quite a task. Went through quite a few batteries in order to do this, so I wish I had a drill press. But now what I need to do is get this thing fitted up into place, and I'm already noticing a couple places where it's rubbing. So it looks like I'm rubbing a little bit right here, and it's kind of preventing me from putting into place. So I may need to grind just a little bit more right here, and I might need to grind a little bit towards the front here to get it to fit up and line up with my bolt holes. But when you cut it out yourself, I'm probably going to run into a few problems. But once I get that figured out and I can get it actually in the place where it's supposed to be, what I can do is actually mark out the areas where I need to weld. So around the edges, and of course these plug weld areas. And then what I can do is actually grind off. I'm probably going to use like a wire wheel on my angle grinder and get rid of all the undercoating and paint and stuff like that, get it down to bare metal, so I can go ahead and get this thing welded on. So I got a little extra grinding to do to make it fit, and then I'm going to prep this, get it down to bare metal, and I should be able to actually start getting this thing welded on. All right, well, I finished all my grinding, and I got this thing fitting up here how I want it to. So you can see it's sitting nice and flush. So I basically had to get rid of some material right in here because it was sort of rubbing on there and not allowing me to push it all the way up into place. But now it's sitting up pretty much where I want it to. So I did have to, right in the middle here, the frame of these things, or the uni-frame channel, the quotes, kind of curves in a little bit right here. It's not like completely straight. So I ended up cutting some notches into my frame stiffeners. You can see kind of here in the middle there. And then I actually cut it on the outside of this one because the bend goes the other way. And that way I was able to actually get this thing to bend how I needed it to fit the contour of the frame. So that works. And then, just using a series of clamps, I was able to get it into place. So if you are doing this, either with, you know, ones that you're building or ones that you buy, do yourself a favor and get some more clamps, because without a bunch of big clamps, this is really a pain. So I'm actually going to start welding this. So I think what I'm going to do is start with some tack welds just to make sure everything's in place how I want it to, get it sitting straight. But then what I'm going to do is stitch weld the perimeter. So, you know, you don't have to weld the entire perimeter. In fact, with this really flimsy uni-frame, it's actually suggested that you don't, because you can actually create a lot of warping when you put a lot of heat on this thin metal. So take your time, you stitch weld here, and then come back, and you know, that way you're not putting too much heat in one spot. And then of course the plug welds, I'm just going to go ahead and go all the way around and fill those in, and this thing's going to be nice and strong. So let's get to welding. All right, well, there we go. There is quite a bit of welding that it takes to put on these stiffeners, but I think I pretty much got it buttoned up. Got the plug welds welded up, and then welding across all the seams here. You know, some of it's kind of hard to get to, but for the most part, I was able to get around pretty much the entire perimeter, and of course weld up the plug welds that I made. And then of course those 1-inch pieces that I put along the bottom here, and so I capped the entire thing off. And so this frame stiffener now wraps all the way around this, and I think it's going to make it super strong. So I'm pretty happy with the way this thing turned out, and it even looks pretty good. And what I like about it is because the thing totally wraps around it, I mean, I covered this thing pretty much completely. It is fully plated, and I think it's going to make it that much stronger. So really the last thing I'm actually going to do is that I wanted to make a tie-in plate. So you notice when I built my bumper, I actually only built it to mount to the factory 3 bolt holes. And, you know, I don't think that's necessarily bad, but I want to go ahead and make this thing stronger. And so what I made is this. It's going to be just a little tie-in plate. And I just kind of designed it, made a little cardboard template, and then drilled some holes. And then this thing is actually just going to bolt to not only the factory bolt holes for the bumper, but it's also going to go through the bolt holes for the steering box. And so this tie-in plate's just going to make this thing, you know, just that much stronger and make my bumper just a far better recovery point. So I'm going to go ahead and bolt these things in, but I want to show you something quickly on the passenger side. So I haven't welded my passenger side up yet. I got it all nice and prepped and everything, but the bolt holes for the passenger side that I'm planning on using for my tie-in bracket on this side, actually the same 3 bolt holes exist on the factory side of the passenger uni-frame channel, but there's really no way to access the bolts. You know, if I put a bolt through here and then try to get a nut on it, there's no really good way to get a nut in there and also get a tool on it. So what I did was, check this out, on the reverse side of the stiffener, all I did was I actually welded some nuts to just, you know, capture welded the nuts to the back side, so that when I go to mount this thing, the nuts will actually go inside the mounting holes there. And so therefore I'll be able to bolt the bumper tie-in plate for the passenger side. So I'm going to go ahead and get the passenger side all welded up as well here. I'll get my tie-in brackets put in and get this thing painted, and I should be able to show you my finished uni-frame stiffeners that I built myself out of scrap metal. Pretty cool stuff. All right, everyone, there it is, the final product. So those are my custom frame stiffeners, you know, designed just using some cardboard, cut out of sheet metal. I used a hole saw to cut out all the plug weld spots, you know, got it all welded up around the seams, I painted it. I just used some regular like Rust-Oleum paint, like black paint, and then I went over it with the undercoat. It's like the rubberized undercoat, spray-on undercoat, which works pretty well. I've been actually pretty happy with it in the past. And then I even got my bumper tie-ins all painted up and installed. So now that my bumper is even more secure. So I mean, this is going to strengthen up the entire front end of the vehicle for sure. So let's take a look at the driver's side. Driver's side, same thing, you know, all cut out, plug welded. Here's the bumper supports. So I haven't finished painting this because I actually have another project that I got to do with relocating my track bar mounts. You notice my track bar mount is not back in yet because that's part of another project. So I left this part blank because, or bare metal, because I'm going to be welding to it. And now as far as the steering box goes, these are 7/16 by 14 thread pitch. They are standard size bolt. I had to go buy some new bolts because the factory ones, number one, are super crusty and nasty. And now that I have all this new metal on here, you know, 3/16 stiffener and a 3/16 plate, bumper tie-in plate, it wasn't long enough. So these are, I went with a 5-inch long bolt, grade 8 of course, and torqued down to spec. And now everything is just that much stronger. And this looks pretty darn good. And I'm really, really happy with the way that this turned out. Alright guys, well here it is. I really appreciate you guys watching the video. You know, one of the things I know I'm probably going to get asked in the comment section is, you know, why didn't you just buy a kit? You know, you can buy front frame stiffener kits for these things. I've seen them as low as, you know, 80, 90, 100 bucks, even with shipping. So, you know, is it worth it to make your own, to design, cut out your own? It's a lot of extra work, and I get that, and I think that comes down to, you know, you and your preference. I like building things myself, and I'm really happy with the way these turned out. I got to custom make them, you know, to exactly the specifications that I wanted by building them myself. Could I have saved a bunch of time by just buying a kit? Yes. Could I add it onto a kit to fit my needs? Yes. But in the long run, I think that I'm going to like this because, you know, I did it myself and I like the idea of DIY. So I'm really happy with the way it turned out. I think it's a great modification overall, just to add to the strength of the Jeep. You know, even the bumper tie-ins, I'm really glad I did that, so now I have that a lot more strength there, even with my recovery point for my front bumper. So again, I appreciate you guys watching the video. If you have a comment, if you have a question, you know, comment down below. I really want to know what you have to say. And if you really like the video, of course, give it the thumbs up. And you should also subscribe to our channel if you are not already. You can also check us out on Instagram and Facebook, just muddybeards 4x4. So again, thank you for watching, and as always, we'll see you on the trail.